Hello and welcome to the Science of Psychotherapy podcast, In Conversations With. I'm Richard Hill, and I am so looking forward to talking to someone I find so interesting. Her name is Gilly Crow, and she's from Suffolk in England, and has written her first book in her 80s. She says it took her 30 years to get to it. She's been a practitioner of psychotherapy for over 30 years. She did start late in life, which was quite fascinating, a bit of a parallel to my experience. And she has written this marvelous book, Wake Up to Your Dreams, an exploration of dreams and dreaming. That's out on Matador now. And she fell in love with the work of Jung, and she has pursued this and discovered extraordinary things, which she's going to share with us. She shares in the book, but she'll share some special ones with us. And what I love is that she lives in the space. There's a beautiful garden, and she has dream groups and workshops that practice in that sort of natural space. So really an interesting, beautiful woman. And remember, the Science of Psychotherapy podcast, it's on all the podcast opportunities and channels. And of course, on our YouTube channel, the Science of Psychotherapy. Do just Google us there and go in. And don't forget to have a look at the scienceofpsychotherapy.net, where we have our academy and where you can get lots of education and education points, certificates to match the education you do at a very, very low price. So for now, enough chatter. Let's go and talk to the real thing, Gilly Crow. Well, Gilly Crow, I am just so pleased to welcome you to the Science of Psychotherapy podcast, and you are my In Conversation With candidate for today.
Thank you, Richard.
It's such a pleasure to meet you. We've certainly had some interactions on email, and I've seen a review of your wonderful book, which we've already talked about, Wake Up to Your Dreams, an exploration of dreams and dreaming, of someone who has spent quite a while getting to a place where she finally gets a wonderful book out. And in your emails, it was beautiful. You said to me, well, oh dear, Richard, I'm unknown. Well, let's change that. Could you just share a little bit about your journey that got you to this point here, just as much as you would like to share with us, just to give us a sense of who this fabulous Gilly Crow is?
That sounds like a bit of an exaggeration, but
How beautifully English of you, I know.
um, well, Richard, it all started back in my sort of late 40s, when my children were of an age where, they were beginning to grow up, and I felt that there was something that I needed to do, but I wasn't sure what it was. But I could feel something kind of pursuing me, and I didn't like it, and I kept running away from it. Until one day I picked up a local paper and saw an advertisement for a counselling course. Now we're talking of the 1980s. So this was not something that was around, and I looked at it and I kind of knew that I had to do it. And I still could feel the resistance, but there was something bigger than that. So I did enroll on it, and it was a very interesting experience because it was run by somebody who liked to work experientially, and most of the work was in experiential groups. It was a baptism of fire.
Yes. That's it's just wonderful getting into that. So there you are. You're in your mid to late 40s and drawn in doing a course. Now, obviously, you eventually graduated and received the diploma, the degree
Yeah.
from that. So what happened then? There you are. So what are you then? You're probably getting close to 50 at that stage.
Oh, indeed, I was. I was just over 50.
Ah,
So, and interestingly, just to go back to that original course, there were 21 people on the course, and only 10 of us survived the 3 years.
wow. But you're the stayer. Well done.
But yeah, well, me and others. And so after that, I uh, wanted to volunteer to get some experience. And so I volunteered in a local GP surgery, general practice surgery on the NHS, and started off with two clients, which was all my Jungian supervisor would allow me to have. And that slowly built up. I was probably there about 4 years. And eventually I was seeing 22 clients a week. And I had got more than enough hours to go for accreditation with the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, which is what it's called now. It was just the BAC then. Because I think I'm one of those people, I need some kind of confirmation that I've I've achieved something, some sort of external. Certainly back there is about external confirmation uh, that I
And
was where I needed to be.
yes,
And
and
so,
and that's very important. And I agree with you. I mean, I was strange. I mean, people know about me. I was a crazy actor and did all my not being terribly serious about life, but it suddenly was doing things, and it took me a little while. I mean, we've got a little bit of a sort of a parallel course here, mid 40s, but oh, you're much more determined and disciplined than I. I did a bachelor of arts, looking at I just wanted to find out about language and things. It took me 7 years. I kept wondering, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What looking for the call, but you had that call. But I imagine that you've done this, you've built up this great experience, you're building up a level of understanding of clients. But tell us a bit more, because you went on. You then started to realize how much you need to know in order to be able to help people. Where did your studies take you next?
well, I think it was the realization as I started work that I didn't know anything, and or very little, and certainly not enough. Um, and so I went on in fairly short order to short courses in Gestalt, brief therapy, transpersonal psychology, analytical psychology. And so they just built up a wider experience of how to work with clients. But I always came back to Jung.
Yes.
Um, and it was during my initial training, and Jung was part of the program. And I can remember picking up Modern Man in Search for Soul, which was our first introduction. And I thought, I could not explain to anyone what it is I've just read, but I understand it.
Hmm.
It was a quite odd feeling that I couldn't intellectually get hold of Jung, particularly in some of his other more abstruse works, but I understood them here. It was
Yes.
something about his ideas that really resonated with me. And then when I started work, although I did all this other training, I kind of integrated it all. And the thing that really struck me was were the clients who would come in and talk about things Jung would have talked about, but they'd never heard of him. And it just confirmed something to me that this man understood the human psyche in a way that I haven't found anyone else to. I mean, I'm not, I appreciate, you know, I don't want to idolize him. I think he would have hated that. But there's something about his ideas, his work, that just inspires me.
Yes, it's a wonderful thing. And here's another parallel. My wonderful mentor, Ernie Rossi, his one of his early books was on dreams, and he was the head of the Jungian Society for a long, long time. And he worked with Milton Erickson, who was a psychiatrist, but also did a lot with hypnosis. And
Yes.
Erickson always thought that Ernie was a fabulous student, initially student and eventually collaborator. And Ernie said, because I'm not from that field, I'm from the field of the human being,
Mm.
and I'm just looking to expand that. And Jung was his central focus for, and we talked about it many, many times. So this moves you into dreams, obviously, as well as the other work, but it's an aspect. And you do like tell us now at this movement into dreams and the way in which you found Jung and dreams coming to life in your own way.
It was really interesting. It was my very, very first client. And this is in the first chapter of my book. Um, and she came, and I've explained in the book, she was older than me, but she described a life of deep, complex trauma with all kinds of really tragic things happening to her. And she also had a lot of physical problems. But she would sit there with a kind of smile on her face, showing absolutely no affect with what she was talking about. And I would go off to my weekly supervision and say, I don't know what's going on. I'm left feeling in pieces at the end of the session and realized I was in a strong countertransference. And I thought, well, clearly she's dissociated, but where is all this stuff? And then only about 4 sessions in, because I was weekly supervision, so I was 4 supervisions down the road, and she just said, "Oh, Gilly, I'm having all these dreams, and it's like I'm living another life during the night." So I go along to my supervision, and I say to my supervisor, and he says, "Well, ask her about her dreams." And I would like to say my first supervisor taught me so much about working with dreams. It's a huge debt of gratitude.
Yes, I think
So,
it's terribly important to for supervision and for supervisors to act as resources and but also to help people spring in their own way. I mean, this is one of the things, and we have sort of compulsory supervision
so
in
do we.
associations, which we do,
Yes.
but it shouldn't be compulsory. In fact, I have. There's supervision they recognize, but my wife and I, Susie, she works in, she's a remedial massage therapist and a lifestyle person, but we supervise each other. We refer and cross talk almost every day. Uh,
Right.
we investigate those elements and point out places to examine and explore, which is so. Thank you for bringing up supervision and for bringing up the gratitude that you had for your supervisor. But I'm interrupting the story, but I just wanted to say that about supervisors. Please continue.
Okay. I mean, just apropos of supervision, I also did a long time ago 3 different supervision trainings. So I'm a senior accredited supervisor. Um, and I love supervising. Um, so it's probably going to be the last thing that I'll give up before I might retire, but I don't have any date in mind. So there we were, and I came back to this client and asked her if she could just share one dream because she was having so many every night, most of them of a nightmare quality. And I sat there and I listened, and there it all was in her unconscious. She'd split it off, she couldn't face it. Every night she would go through the traumas. And I have tried to convey this in my book. It was so powerful, Richard. And I learned through this client, I mean, what a gift that she gave me. And I put that in the book. It's the difficulty about it was the number of dreams and the intensity of the dreams that she was having. So I would just say, choose one, write the rest down so that you've got them on paper, which helps to get it out of the mind. And then the question I would ask myself is, how did she choose?
What a
You've got
brilliant question. Yes. What
7,
motivates you
8,
to choose that? Yeah.
yes. Why did you choose that? And the more I thought of it as I worked with her, I realized that there was something during the previous day that had acted as a trigger, that had a connection with the trauma of the past. And then I brought that into the sessions, and we began to realize how important the context of a dream can be. Is what has prompted your unconscious to bring that to you during the night. And there's more often than not, not always, something has happened during the day. It might be a word in a newspaper. It might be seeing somebody. It might be passing an object. Anything will have prompted something in the unconscious that's saying, I'll produce that. And it always seems to me, I've said this in the book, every single part of a dream is so important. We go for the important bits, but it's all relevant. Otherwise, why would it be there? So anyway, I worked with this client, and it was so healing for her. And I also say this is what was at work here? What brought that client to me in the first place? Why did she say, I'm having all these dreams? And I have often thought, was there something collective at work here? Was there something in the collective unconscious that I knew nothing about, she knew nothing about, but we both picked it up? And that brought her to me. It opened something in me. And it was from that beginning that I began to understand the importance of our dream life and how it can change our waking life.
Yes. It's such a wonderful um, engagement and slow enrichment. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. And I must admit, as I thought about the collective, the nature of collectiveness and the nature of things, and there's a sort of a sort of a side of it that as if there's some kind of extra natural drawing. Um, and I must admit, I'm just sort of sitting a little bit middle to the side of saying, it may or may not occur, but when it does occur, when connection does occur, and things like interpersonal neurobiology, we talk about these sorts of things. But when the connecting does occur, the collective nature of its relevance is naturally present. So I'm beginning to grasp that understanding of that overall story going on. And there are some episodes we miss. There are some pages we might not get, but when we do get them, it is a most glorious experience. And with the woman, so she worked. You're feeling this mutual framework. How long did you work with her? Can you
Um,
remember some of
I,
those elements to tell us?
I think it was for about 3 years.
Yeah. So there was a lot for her to to reprocess, to reconnect with, and And
Absolutely. And to be able to engage with the trauma and see how it was affecting her current life. And there was huge healing went on, not just in her mind, but in her body.
yeah,
Her physical symptoms largely subsided. And that's always struck me, increasingly so, how much we hold in the body in the way of memory that we are not conscious of. We think
so
we've dealt with something, but we've still got the memory in our bodies.
I had
And
a wonderful a Chinese herbalist. He was a master of kung fu. He was an acupuncturist, and this is in my early days before I got involved in this when I was still the wayward actor. And it was rather funny. I did a commercial one time as a sort of Superman look-alike. And so whenever I was in the waiting room of the surgery, he would walk out. There was always about 30 or 40 people. It was a huge, busy practice. And he would come out and he would stand at the door on the other side of this large room and he'd say, "Oh, Superman, come on in," And I go, "Oh, please." But we were talking about these things. We were talking about the way I'm thinking and the body, because and he would work on the body. And at one stage, and I can't remember the context of the situation, but we were talking about brain and body, and he just pointed at the neck. He said, "Look, all connected." And this wonderful of idea, this misrepresentation that this is a barrier rather than a place of flow. And it's taken us a while. I mean, Bessel van der Kolk, with his book, The Body Holds the Score, has really rocked people. But of course, the Greeks were talking about this 2,500 years ago. We must
absolutely.
feel and sense and dance. So this wonderful story. And here's another question that just came to mind. And in the sense of the length of the therapy and the progress of the therapy, it was almost, I'm wondering, did the dreams themselves actually tell you that the therapy was continuing and where it was continuing to?
Absolutely. They acted as a kind of guiding light, to show us were we on the right track. And very slowly, her dreams began to change.
Wow.
Um, and it was the most incredible experience for me. Um, because I was in completely unknown territory to start with. But by the end of it, I had really understood how important dreams were. Um, and then I couldn't put that aside. So as other clients came, and I love the way this happens, other clients would come and say, "Oh, did I have this funny dream last night? Is that something you might work with?" And it's as though they pick something up. And so that's how I began to work more with dreams, um, and how rewarding it was. I mean, obviously, there are clients that can't or won't go there. And I've said in the book how important it is not to delve into the unconscious with somebody who has severe mental health problems, um, because you can push them into psychosis. My
Yes,
sense is,
it's a place where there is a mess. That's the whole point of
absolutely,
it.
I
So
don't want to make it any messier.
yeah,
So, if somebody was borderline and would come with a dream, I would simply listen to it, look at the feelings, see how they felt about that, contain it, and that's all I would do. Um, and one of the quotes in the book, I have quoted Jung an awful lot. And he says, it is often something like, it's often sufficient just to listen to the dream, that you don't have to do anything with it.
yes. And this is one of the problems with getting married to a methodology or becoming too
Absolutely.
too inept. And I know with Ernie Rossi, in my work, we call mirroring hands, which is a way of working it to engage as sort of the unconscious, that dreamlike state. And people say, and how do you get into it, and how do you do it? And I said,
Mm.
well, when it emerges, when it arises, and
Yeah.
they're quite horrified when I say, I don't do it all the time. In fact, some clients I don't do it at all. And exactly as you so beautifully described there, when there is a destabilized, an unstable psyche, um, don't poke it, and be respectful and gentle. But as you've gone on, and I want to take something more from the book, but I also know that you live in an area, beautiful area of England called Suffolk, and you do dream groups and workshops. And do you use the beauty of the countryside there to enhance the experience, the workshop experiences, or do you have to take yourself off to the city, to the establishments?
Absolutely not. Um, no, the first dream group evolved. I mean, again, this going back to training. I mean, up to the point where I was 69, um, there just wasn't an opportunity to go any further with my training. But it was like there was something there, and I was thinking, because my supervisees would be coming, and they would all have degrees, and I hadn't got one, and I thought, well, all the courses that certainly the first course I did was then a degree course. And it was the same thing, but it was a degree course. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Here are all my supervisees trotting in with their BScs and MAs and things, and I haven't got one. And a supervisee came in and told me she was going to do a degree course because she, like me, had trained some time ago. But because of her experience, she could do it in a year. So I kind of rather gently asked her about it, and she gave me the details. And I thought, well, the only problem if I can do this is I can't be on the same course as her because of the boundaries. And so I made some inquiries and discovered that they were doing this course in two places. And the one that I wanted to do it in wasn't the one that my supervisee was going to do it.
Oh,
So
the,
it's
the,
like,
the fates are with you again.
they absolutely. And so I went for my interview, which was quite funny because it was with one of my colleagues, um, and um, who was then a tutor on this course. And anyway, off I went. And of course, I was by far the oldest. And I sat there in this in the group, the initial group. There was about 20 odd of us, and everybody was checking in. And I thought, what do I do? What do I say? And I thought, well, you'll just have to tell the truth. So, because some of them were we were joining their last year of training. So I sat there and I took a deep breath and I said, I've been in practice for whatever it was, a long time, must have been 24 years then. And I said, I'm a BACP senior accredited psychotherapist and a BACP senior accredited supervisor. And everybody went.
Mm.
And I thought, I have to say this because I can't cover it up. But we do our first triad, and I'm with two other students. And one of them looks at me and she said, well, there's only one place for you to go. And I said, yes. She said, down.
What a sobering comment. But it's uh, uh, if I if I hold back and let myself. Yes, interesting. Interesting.
Well, it was the most wonderful experience I've
Yeah.
ever had this year with the most astonishing people. And the reason I've shared that with you is that they obviously began to understand as people got to know me that I worked with dreams. And so people would come up in the break and say, "You doing anything at lunchtime? Because I had this dream last night. Can I run it past you?" And of course, I would say yes, because I love working with dreams. And then I celebrated my 70th birthday, I think something like 2 days after I'd passed and got my degree. And um, that's where the photograph of me in the back of the book, that's on that occasion. Um, and all probably 10 plus of the course came up and said, "Gilly, would you run a dream group for us?" And that's how they started. So we were seven, there's now six, but this is 13 years. We're still working and meeting together.
Wow.
And then two other completely separate groups of psychotherapists. I was at a workshop and another group approached me and asked if I would run a group. And then another group that I was part of asked me to. So I run three. And your question was, do I use the countryside? Well, the answer to that is kind of yes. In the wintertime, we work in my home, which is Victorian, and we have an open fire and we bring lunch to share and we work all day um, and do the most amazing things. We act our dreams out. We, yes, I think, and it's extraordinary how honest people can be. And clearly, after all these years, we know each other very well indeed. And I initially just felt I needed perhaps to share a dream, but it wasn't right. And so I don't do that because I just need to hold the group, facilitate it, although everybody does that. But I just need to be the one that needs, to keep the boundaries and that kind of thing. So I have the most beautiful garden. I'm very, very fortunate. It's, I don't know whether you have wildlife trusts in Australia, but
Yes.
we do here. And 40 odd years ago, the Suffolk Wildlife Trust designated my garden as a private nature reserve. So I always feel the garden's a bit like me, and there's a wild part to me. And so the garden rather reflects that. But in the garden, I have this beautiful, what we call the little house. There's a picture of it in the back of the book. And in the summertime, that's where the groups are held. So we're right in the middle of this wildness. So yes, I'm not a city person. I absolutely need nature and a contact with the natural world to
Yes. Well,
function.
we all do, and it's wonderful to see you showing how marvelous it is to be it. I mean, now, of course, we take people on nature courses. We take them back to nature, and you sort of think we're just recovering what things that we've lost. Um,
Absolutely.
and dreams can bring these out. So just we're sort of probably coming up to our time shortly because
Right. Okay.
it scoots along. But the stories of the development of your career and the nature of psychotherapy at the same time, there's wonderful parallels there. But just quickly getting a little bit of a look at the book, you've referred to it and talked about those elements. Now, my take on it is that it is largely experiential. I mean, there's some bits and pieces, and you quote Jung beautifully every now and again, but there's quite a number of case studies and case examples, so people can really sort of see what happens. You sort of detail the account, and then look at. And I know there's the word. So I saw in a review they use the word analysis, but I like the second word they used, which was an understanding, to come to an understanding, and
Absolutely.
that's what we show in the book.
Yes. And I deliberately haven't used the word interpretation.
Hmm.
That's why I use exploration,
Yeah.
because that's what we do. If a meaning comes out, that's a plus. But you don't have to get to a meaning for the dream to be meaningful.
Yes, it's not necessarily just a cognitive thing; it's a body thing as well.
Completely a body thing.
Hmm.
And that I talk about the double resonance when the dream worker and the dreamer actually feel a somatic response to something. And it's like that aha light bulb moment. Doesn't happen that often, but it's wonderful when it does. And we there are so many synchronicities that happen um, during the dream work, in the work that I do with one-to-one work with clients. And it's and synchronicity for me is um, a demonstration, if that's the right word, of how we cannot separate the inside from the outside, that the one influences the other. We go around with our eyes shut most of the time. I certainly did. But once you notice it, you can't not notice it.
Oh, and
It's
that's
like,
beautiful. That describing of that connection where there's a mutual experience, and I have this now more often than before with the mirroring hands work, and it's a wonderful. In fact, I actually had one session where we had a dream in the moment, a visualization moment, and we shared it. And he was walking up a mountain and he was having trouble getting up, climbing this last bit. And I, sitting opposite him, I said, "Oh, look, there's a handhold over here." And he reached his arm round and said, "Oh, yes, thank you." Uh,
wow.
but people, but people talk about burnout and all those things, which is very true. Whereas it's like the wonder and the joy of going that I can hear in this, of going into a session. Uh, today might be one where I have that glorious experience, that touching the genius, as a few people have talked about. Uh, so this is an opportunity for people to with the book, certainly in their own lives, but using the book as a wonderful guide to being able to engage with themselves. And I really encourage people to grab this book. It's all over the place. I've seen it in German bookshops and French bookshops. So uh, as we sort of come to a bit of a close, and we could talk for hours, of course, is there something I've missed, a question I've missed, or perhaps just a rounding off of the nature of what you're bringing now that you are known?
Beginning to be. I just wanted to show people, if they haven't seen it, is this, because that is very special, that cover, because it was designed by my neighbors.
Ah,
And the, the butterflies are the butterflies that have been in their garden and my garden. So it was a lovely collective effort. I think, would like to finish with, if anybody does feel they would like to read the book, that it is really important to also try and find an experienced guide. It is accessible to people who are not trained therapists. Um, and I think it's important to have support in dream work. And just to kind of bring it all, I started off by saying how I'd run away from commitment to becoming a therapist. And I ran from that book for 30 years until I couldn't run any further. And the dream right at the end that I put in the postscript It's about me being in a place of healing, that whatever it was that I had done had was the right thing to do. And the curious thing, Richard, is I have no sense of ownership of that book whatsoever. It's gone, and it's like it's going to live its own life. So I don't know whether we have time, but I would love to share with you. After I got the first copies of the book, and I had a dream group 2 days later, and we pick these dragon cards. I wonder, do I have time to
Yes, yeah,
share?
oh yeah, of course. We're controlling the
Was
whole story here. What did you
It
get?
was absolutely mind-blowing. That is the picture, and this is what it says, and I'll finish when I've finished it. It says, I am the dragon of the dreaming seeds, wrapped in the warmth of Earth's heart. Here I dream in a huge cavern filled with diamond seeds and soft glowing orbs of light. This is a nurturing place for all the deep dreaming that Earth is doing now. Each of the diamond seeds are dreams that you have gifted to her in your awakening. They sparkle as the dreaming goes deeper and becomes clearer. Earth is re-envisaging herself. You are here, flashing out all the colors of your inspirations into her new cycle of creations. You are part of it all. Dream and celebrate with her.
Thank you. Those are the most beautiful parting words. We will say no more other than goodbye and see you next time.
Thank you, Richard. Bye bye now.